All right. Well, we'd like to welcome everyone this morning. We're going to go ahead and get started to honor your time. And we appreciate you taking the time this morning to be on with us and share your insight and your input on how we need to move forward. And so with no further ado, I'm going to introduce our superintendent, Dr. John Parker. But Corey Flager, if I could have you take down your slides for just a second so that we can actually see Dr. Parker, that would be wonderful. And Dr. Parker, take it away.
Thank you, Jay, and thank you everyone for joining us. My name is John Parker, and if I haven't had a chance to meet you before, it's, whether we're doing it in person or in Zoom land, I feel grateful that we have this opportunity to meet. It's interesting with the pandemic, Zoom and Zoom meetings became the norm. And it's really nice to be able to have these to meet the needs of our select community who have challenges, maybe perhaps related to work, families. And so getting your input using this medium is always a plus. I also want to thank you for taking time out. Your feedback is very important to us. We have done considerable work, and the volunteers involved with the Capital Projects Committee has come together and put together information for you today that we hope is going to be very informative and help you and allow you to provide some feedback today. So thank you to the entire team. And also, you're going to hear a lot about just the work that the committee did as a result of the study and survey that we completed last year and shared at our board meeting last spring. And with these capital projects that you're going to see various ideas and concepts. You're going to hear information about tax rates. You're going to hear quite a bit today. So please don't hesitate to capture your questions. There's going to be opportunities in the chat and all of that. I guess the other thing before we get started, I just want to share that this is our school district. These are capital projects that are possibilities, but these projects make our school community something that is special to us. And so your input here is going to be very important as far as helping us and guiding us towards what suggestions we bring to the school board for their approval on potential and the capital projects levy. So with that, I'd like to introduce Melissa McFadden from NAC, and she's going to take it away for us here now. So Melissa.
Thanks, Dr. Parker. Corey, if you wouldn't mind sharing. So today you heard from Jay and Dr. Parker. We also have Lauren and Lindsay, who are representative of the Capital Facility Planning Committee as community members. And so there's several individuals who have volunteered their time, and they are here to share some of their perspective if you do have particular questions. We also had a number of individuals last night. So we are going to give a brief overview of the facility planning process and the work completed to date. Then Corey Plager and Gina will share some financial information with you. And then in the end, we will open it up for Q&A. In addition, we have an online survey that the district will be sharing via email that we do want to get your thoughts and perspectives from a district-wide. So many different ways to provide input, and we want that, and so does the Facility Planning Committee, because they are relying on that to make the decisions that would ultimately move forward to the board. So in the next slide, we'll just quickly go through. This is really what the Capital Facility Planning Committee has done to date. As John alluded to, there was a study and survey completed, which is a state mandated document, which establishes sort of the facility baseline across the district of all of the school buildings. And then looking forward, a portion of that is developing a long range plan. And the long range plan is something that starts to identify in 5, 10, 15-year increments the goals that are needed for the district. And that can be small things like re-roofs, classroom additions. It can be major projects like replacement of schools like you've done in the last several years. It also can be looking towards the future for purchasing land or other future needs. So it's really thinking about what the entire school district needs and developing that roadmap. So for the committee to really have a baseline understanding, there was 2 pretty massive sessions this summer. So thank you all, where they did some tours in July of several buildings, then really dug deep and started to look at some of the needs later in August that were and have been identified by the school district. And now as we're moving towards some of the financial conversations, adding cost to projects, we really felt that the community members on that planning committee wanted some more information from all of you. And that's why we're taking a moment to pause to get that information from you. And then next week, we will work to start developing packages, which ultimately will be that long-range plan and will move forward to the school board as a recommendation. Ultimately, the school board does make the final decision, but that is the work of the facility planning committee to date. So with that, today's conversation is with Corey and Gina really focusing on just some of the information related to the kind of terminology that will be used as we move forward, as well as just giving some context to the state of the financial picture of the district. So Corey, please, Gina, take it away.
Great, thank you. And this is a presentation that Executive Financial Officer Gina Bowles and I put together, and we shared this with the committee back in September. Happy to share it to the wider group today. Gina, I'll go ahead and take the lead and let me know if you got anything to add in here. But what we'd love to do is share a little bit about, what is a capital levy? The district hasn't ever had a capital levy in the past. And then talk about tax history and show some actual data. And if you'll notice at the very bottom of each slide, you'll see the source for that data. And then some statistics about your tax base. You have a really changing tax base with a really booming new construction, new development. So just kind of how does that impact your taxpayers? So before we get started, I'd like to share what the differences are between levies, capital levies, and bonds, and education program and operations levies, which is also up for renewal this February. This is flexible revenue from taxpayers to supplement basic education. Unfortunately, we're still using this for a lot of basic education that the state's not funding, but this funds athletics, the arts, drama, curriculum that isn't funded by the state, teachers that aren't funded by the state, and some administrative, utility, janitorial, and they're subject to levy lid laws. We can't ask for whatever we want at this level. Up to 4 years and simple majority. A capital projects levy, as I mentioned, has never been brought forth, but it's somewhat of a common practice, and I'll show you in a later slide how many across the state are doing capital levies. The most common uses right now are technology, safety, and security. We're also seeing districts use these for critical repairs, roofing, HVAC, fixing parking lots. These can be up to 6 years. There's no limit other than a logical limit on what can be supported by the community, and also simple majority. Bonds are what we use to build the new high school. And these are tax exempt instruments where you can spread them out over like 20 years, kind of like a home mortgage. I just think a capital projects levy is like a car loan, a 6-year thing. A bond is like a bigger issue for new construction or major renovations, 60% supermajority. So what are the most supported items in 22? Why 22 instead of 23? We had over 80 capital projects brought to the voters. So we had a really big sample size. And technology was one of the top items supported by voters. HVAC, energy efficiency, critical repairs, safety, security. These are just some of the most frequently supported items. And in that year, 80% of capital levies, 83% have been passing. And the number underneath the year shows how many issues were brought forth. What you're noticing is there's aging facilities, there's increasing needs, and we're seeing more and more capital levies every year. A decade ago, we'd have 9, 10, 15 capital levies. Now we have 48, 66, 80. This is a new tool that schools are really thinking about when it comes to keeping their buildings dry and heated and safe. And so just another option available for consideration, and that's why we're bringing this forward. If you're asking, well, what's the difference between a capital levy and a bond? This is what we used for the new high school. You see the picture in the bottom left that we supported. And the biggest challenge here is 60% supermajority. But this, as I mentioned, is more like a mortgage versus a car loan. So people are asking, why should we consider a capital levy now? We have our EP&O levy. Shouldn't that be top of mind? And I think the answer is, of course, yes. The EP&O levy is so important. But since 2015, districts that have run multiple propositions on the same exact ballot have experienced even greater success. So on the left, when people run a capital levy alone, it passes 81% of the time. And EP&O levies 92% of the time. When those two are both linked together, the EP&O levy has remained unchanged statistically, but the capital levy is much more supported. And so we know the data is there. There's hundreds of samples on this. But what we don't know is why, and I think we have some anecdotal evidence, is that people like to have everything put in front of them at once. Instead of pass this tax measure now, pass this tax measure next year, pass this one the year after, putting them together in a comprehensive package so that voters are aware of what each thing is. And when you put them side by side, it's a little bit easier to explain the differences between an EP&O levy and a capital levy. So one thing that we share with different school districts is that there's actually some data that shows don't be afraid to put things together if that's the timing of what you need. If you need these things at the same time, don't feel like you have to delay them. Here is the Central Valley School District election passage rate history. In green is the EP&O levies. And what you'll notice is outstanding support. Since the turn of the century, we haven't seen any challenges. The voters have been highly supportive. Well, we've noticed a little bit of a decrease recently. In 2020, it was a really difficult time because the state limited what the school district could collect locally. And then, oh, oops, we made a mistake. That was too low. You can go out for a supplemental levy to get back to where you were. And that's challenging. And then, of course, we don't have to relive what happened in 21 and 22 during the pandemic, virtual school. But this is kind of common throughout the state where we saw a little dip in support, and we're starting to see that trend hopefully turn around here. But over 70% support in the previous elections pre-pandemic. So some challenges in the area. You may have noticed one on your tax statement, an increase in assessed valuation, or looking around the increase of new development, new neighborhoods, new businesses. And last year, there was 30.2% growth. I live in Spokane and noticed my personal home went up 33%. Well, this year, it's kind of settled down a little bit. And now we're at 7.2% preliminary growth for 2024. But just a handful of years ago, Central Valley's tax base was $6 billion, and now it's over $17 billion. So with this growth comes challenges and opportunity, right? You have a more robust tax base, but it's challenging as you grow this quickly. So this is going to show you my graphic design skills, but this is an example that we put forth that shows how does this impact of assessed valuation growth impact the normal homeowner? So let's say this is the average price of a home in Central Valley School District, and we're all paying $1,000 levy. So there's only 4 kids at 4 different homes, and all of a sudden, all 4 of our property values went up 20%. Well, just because our home values go up doesn't mean Dr. Parker and the school board could increase taxes. The levy is already set and approved by the board, and they have to wait till their next cycle to decide if a different amount is relevant. So what happened here is all those home values went up, but they went up equally. Some homes go up faster than others, some go up slower than others, and that does impact the sway of tax payments. But now this is what's really happening in Central Valley is there's new houses. And so now there's these new homes at this new 20% value. This is actually helping offset some of the tax bills for citizens. So what is that number in Central Valley? Over 400 million this year, over 410 million last year of new construction. This is new businesses, new homes coming to the area to pay taxes. This is the highest in Spokane County. So these are huge numbers. You'll notice the previous norm was 100 million, which is still a really big number. Now we're at 300, 200, 400 million in new construction. So as I said, a challenge to the community because with this new construction comes new FTE, new enrollment, new traffic, but it also comes with a new opportunity for more people to come to the area to support the school tax infrastructure. Here's a quick visual of the EP&O levy. I know that's not the focus of today, but these all kind of dance together. They're all related. This is the EP&O levy history of Central Valley School District. I mentioned earlier that the state limited what they could collect in 2019-20, but we're back to where we were previously. And this shows that regular slope. I will share a little fact of 2023. The levy maximum calculated by OSPI is $41 million. And currently the district is operating significantly under the max at 31 million. So just a little informational fact there. And in 2024, the levy is slated to grow to 33.1. So what do tax rates look like when you see that property values steepen so much and the property taxes only increase with inflation? What you're noticing is a decrease in tax rates from a peak of $5.40 in the mid 2000 teens. Now currently in 2023, we're at $2.99. And as a quick recap, what was on the ballot in 2021, starting for the 22-23 year, was $2.40. So that's another representation of what happens when property values skyrocket. The district forecasted conservative growth, $2.40 estimate, and have outperformed that estimate. In the first year, they outperformed that estimate by 8 cents and now by 49 cents. So that shows you there the district can't just tax when the property values go up, to reevaluate that after each election. But the district's local taxes are at a low for the last decade plus a few years. Now, does that offset certain people's home values? Will they be paying more in 23 than 24? That depends on each individual home. This is a quick recap of, in green, what did the district ask the voters to approve on the ballot? The amount is set and the rate is an estimate, but what you'll notice in light gray is what's actually happened. The district has done a fantastic job at forecasting and meeting or exceeding the expectations of the voter based on what's on the ballot. This is a quick slide that it looks just like a slide I showed you where it shows in green the EP&O and tan the school bond. But one thing this puts on top of it is a school tax that the district has no authority or control over. This is how we've always funded basic education in combination with our state schools tax. And in light gray, that tax goes back to Olympia, and that's how we fund basic education. And in our state, over 75 to 85% of our funding comes from the state. And what you'll notice is these rates are also coming down, and there's a brand new tax in McCleary to support the basic school infrastructure as well. So where do you fall in your peers? This is always interesting to take a look at. Not sure if this really drives decision-making, but it's always an interesting data point here. From the Spokane County Assessor and Treasurer's Office, they list that Central Valley is at $2.98.8. And this just shows you your peers. At the very top, you'll notice a couple of small schools that are K6s or K7s, followed by the rest of the schools that are high school serving districts. As I said, not sure if it's how important it is for decision-making, but interesting nonetheless. And this is very fluid. Each year, you'll notice that each school district is reconsidering their needs. And this is a major election cycle for Spokane County schools. So almost every school district on this list right here is going through what you're going through right now, thinking about renewing the EP&O levy, considering capital levies, or considering bonds. One other consideration that I want to name drop out here is just local effort assistance, which is so important to school districts that might not be along the Puget Sound I-5 corridor. We've always had this funding from the state since, gosh, early 2000s, where it supports communities that don't have the tax base of some of the larger school districts in our state. And they've had the state funding that goes along with our levy, like a levy match. And one thing that we're noticing as property values increase is the state says, as your tax base grows, you need less support from us. They say, well, now you go out and collect those local taxes should you need them, which is still hard because we're still not keeping up with certain schools on the west side of the state who are growing because they might have Boeing, Amazon, Microsoft, you name it. But the district is in a position where, at no fault of their own, they go from 8 million in local effort assistance funding to an estimated 1 million. So if the district does no adjustments, whether it's to the EP&O levy or to the capital levy to fund improvements or repairs, they're already at a deficit of about $6.77 million. So before I turn it back over to you, Melissa, anything to add to that, Gina, that I didn't hit on?
No, you did an outstanding job. Thank you, Corey.
Okay, well, thanks for having me. Melissa, happy to discuss any questions, or Jay, anything I didn't meet on the slides.
Yeah, I think that, if we go to the next slide, if it's up, so we will have, like I mentioned, a survey. And last night we had an open house session at Bowdish Middle School where individuals in the community were able to take tours. They're filling out a similar survey. They also were able to go to different tables with different topics. So we did take the time today to do a more deep dive into the financial piece. We gave a little bit more of a brief overview last night, but we did want to open up the conversation to allow individuals to ask questions. And Cindy is going to moderate that, but at this point, I think that's sort of the next step.
Thank you, Melissa. Oh, go ahead, Cindy.
Thank you. The first couple of questions that we have did come from last night, but we also wanted to make sure that people know that at the bottom of your screen, you have a Q&A option that you can ask pertinent questions this morning, and then we will try to address as many of those as we can. So right now what I'll do is start with a couple of questions that we had from last night. This first one has to do with Bowdish in particular. A parent that was there and was on a tour noticed that if you want to go to the office from the outside, you would have to go through a student hallway to get to the office. And this parent is asking if there is a district plan for safety for schools that don't have a vestibule.
And I'll start with that, but then let Melissa follow up if she'd like. But yes, absolutely. We have, after our last round of construction, in all of our new schools, you will notice that there is what we call a protected entrance. And so after school has started, anyone from the community or parents that comes into the school can come into the foyer, but then they have to buzz into the office and be allowed into the office to be vetted before they're allowed to go anywhere in the building. Those schools that were not part of the bond are part of our discussion and planning right now on how do we create those protected entrances or those security corridors in those schools. And so that is a part of what we'll be sharing with our board a little bit down the road, and then also coming back to our community and sharing. Here are some of the plans that we're looking at now that we've gotten the input from our community. Melissa, anything else on that you'd like to add?
I think that Bowdish is one of the schools that is not having the vestibule, but we are evaluating all of the schools and including those. And that was something that the facility planning committee was really clear about. Just in the initial conversation is really making sure that there was an investment to have that secure vestibule. They also prioritized some of the roofing needs, and then mechanical systems, heating and cooling. So just conceptually, those were some priorities that the community put forward. And that is what we will be focusing on actually next week to start developing some costs associated with those improvements.
Okay, Melissa, this one, you just kind of spoke to it a little bit, but what is the district plan to assess and update unseen aspects of the building, such as HVAC, electrical, and plumbing?
Yeah, so that's where we are so thankful. We have Gerald Olson, Corey Grow, Jay, the whole team, because they are the ones that are really in tune of the chronic issues related to certain mechanical systems or roofing infrastructure, things that you just don't see. And that was one of the important aspects of going around and doing those initial 4 tours, is the community members got to appreciate that we're participating in the facility planning. If your child doesn't go to school there, you may not be aware of some of the issues. And so for the community members to see the 4 different schools that we toured and then talk about some of those things that are needing updates and needing investments, that's something that has been, we have a mechanical engineer that we're working with. In addition, there's things like just simple mechanical controls. That's something that the district operations individuals know and are communicating with our team so we can assign costs to those. and then bring that forward to the facility planning team.
Thank you. This next question is a fun one. Is there a plan to keep or create shop classes in any schools which may be remodeled?
Well, I'll take a stab at that to start with. In terms of the remodels that we've done, yes, we kept, like at Horizon Middle School comes to mind because Melissa and her team helped us design that, but we did keep a shop class active there that was there prior. And so that is something that was taken into consideration with the planning. That's always taken into consideration as we move forward with planning and talk to that individual community and that individual staff about what are the important things for you to see moving forward, what kind of programs will be wanted in the future. And so that's what we try to plan for and design for. So I would say, yes, that is something that we always keep in mind. However, a major remodel of a school interior is probably, as they said earlier, is probably not going to happen if we go with a capital levy. Those are going to be more of the projects like the HVAC, the roofs, the parking lots, the safe and secure vestibules, those kinds of things are what we're looking at, making sure that we upgrade for those schools that need it, and then also just maintain. We have our new schools, and I say new because they're the newest ones to us, but you have to remember that our first school that we built with our bond in 2015 is getting to be 5 and 6 years old now. And so schools like McDonald, Adams, South Pines that were built in the early 2000s, there are some HVAC and there are some roofing issues and things like that that we'll want to address as well. And so that's really kind of where we're going. But as we move down to our long-term plan, absolutely, that will be part of our discussions as we look at design and construction of those individual sites.
Dr. Parker, you have a question.
Not so much a question, but just I want to kind of bolster the response that Mr. Rao was sharing. We also, by virtue of completing our recent 5-year strategic plan, we are looking at various pathways that are going to be purposeful and meaningful for our students as they move up through the years of what they experience in the district. And this also includes opening up the channels to pathways beyond high school. Shop classes may be very much a part of that. And that is one of the things that we are looking at and would be really interested to hear any of you that are on today. If there's some specific ideas you have about that, we would love to hear it. But we partner very closely with our business community. And the reason we do that is because that manufacturing piece is very important to our community, where we have students that have the opportunity to go into those trades. And if we're teaching kids in classrooms like shop classes that are prepping them for that pathway, that'll be important for us to be consistent with that. So I just wanted to kind of strengthen kind of a response with that will be important to us going down the road.
Thank you. I do want to remind you again that there is that Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. So if you have a question, we will try to address it this morning and get you a reply for that. Another question that came up last night is, what is the district's plan for our portables? My kid doesn't feel or doesn't have ready access to a close bathroom and doesn't feel safe.
Sorry, it took me a minute to unmute on that. Yeah, portables are something that, have been necessary as we have grown in the past and we're not able to keep up with the capacity in our schools. As we have now reached an excellent part of our history to be in, for our schools are now right-sized for the most part. And so the portables, as you have seen, have started to disappear. If you look at like Green Acres Elementary had portables, a number of schools that we just went through and remodeled, Evergreen Middle School, a number of schools had portables that are no longer there because we were able to build to the right capacity as we did the remodel. I would see that that same thing would be happening in the future. And then we have decisions that we need to make about, portables that may be at other schools that are not yet on the block for remodel, but things like at Central Valley High School, we have a number of portables, but we've been able to right size Central Valley High School because we were able to build Ridgeline High School. And so the portables are not as necessary there. And so that's kind of our philosophy. And we continue to look at them because there may be needs in the future, but we want to make sure that we don't jump too quickly, but that we're also trying to work towards solid stick-built construction as best we can as we move, as we have in the past, and as we continue to move forward in the future on that.
Thank you, Jay. Are there any plans for technology? My kid says the Chromebook he uses at school is old. That comes from a parent this morning.
And I would say absolutely, that is part of our discussion, is to how do we weave in, as Corey talked up front on the presentation, that those issues of technology devices, they are very supported by our community and wanted and needed. And so that is a large part of the discussion moving forward with the committee, as well as what is needed in terms of technology. The personal devices that each child might need to be successful in school, as well as other technology, our cameras, our infrastructure with our technology. A number of discussions that we're having with our IT department and those who are best suited to help us figure out what we need to do in the future. But I'd also like to hear, I know Dr. Parker has some a great background in technology and maybe has some thoughts on this as well.
Thank you, Jay. I think one of the things in preparing kids for our future is that while we made it through the pandemic and technology played a vital role, we also have some new technologies that are coming out that we are going to want to make sure that we're providing opportunities for our kids to experience those new technologies, things like artificial intelligence. How do we prepare our students to kind of come of age in that area? And with some of our infrastructure, whether it's networks or the actual devices that kids use, we all know that computers and devices really change a lot in just 1 year. And I know too, we have, with the aging devices that we have that were heavily used during the pandemic, I know that there is a significant need there. And so how do we continue to be forward thinking as well as building up the network infrastructure? And also, how do we, I guess, prepare our teachers with providing the professional development in technology so that they can be well equipped to support the kids in their teaching and learning? That is going to be a primary focus of ours. Thank you, Jay, for queuing me up for that.
Could Central Valley School District potentially use any of these funds to increase the number of our SROs, which are safety resource officers?
I'm actually going to see if Gina can answer, or Corey Grow, either one could answer that one from the business perspective of how we fund different parts of our budget.
And Jay, I can step into Gina. I'm not
Sure.
sure. The capital levy does have a line of not supporting items in the general fund other than technology. Gina, anything to add to that?
Yeah, so specifically with our SRO and safety and security, for those positions, they are funded through the EP&L levy.
Okay. With new construction around older schools, how are we addressing lack of sidewalks for students that have to walk? Green Acres Elementary in particular has no sidewalks for students heading east on 4th Street. Are we working with the city on needed road improvements?
The simple answer to that is yes, we're working with our city and our county. Every year, the city and county review what they're going to be able to do with their budget in terms of their sidewalks. Of course, every time that we have done a project, the sidewalk improvements are part of what we do around the building. Now, getting to the building, we do work with the city in saying, here's a safety corridor, here's a concern that we have. Can you plan for that? And in your construction, can you help us make sure we have sidewalks to where we need them? And the city has done a nice job with that in terms of every year they've improved certain walking zones along, especially if you think, 4th, 8th, 12th, 16th, some of those roads that had long stretches of roadway with no sidewalks on the side and very small gravel shoulders. And they've helped us improve some of those. We've got a long way to go. And absolutely, I would love to hear from you if there's a sidewalk in an area that you are concerned about. Please email Corey Groh, Gerald Olson, or myself, and we will make sure that when we work with the city, that is one that we can bring up to them to say, here is an issue that's come up in terms of safety corridor for kids getting to school.
Thank you, Jay. One more reminder that on the bottom of your screen, you have a Q&A option that you can send us questions, and we will try to get those answered. This next question is regarding the building on Barker. Is the Barker building on your radar for updates and portable removal?
Well, it's a good question because the Barker building still houses a number of very important programs for our district that I'm not sure that we have space for in other places. But in terms of being on the radar, absolutely. Because when we look at what are the future needs of our district, what are the programs that we need to have, we look at every space available. And so it's every building that the district has is part of that look, and absolutely the programs that are there, the CVVL, SVLA, all those programs are part of that discussion as to what is best in the future. At this point, there have been no specific discussions with any building in terms of, as a building in and of itself, are we going to remodel, upgrade, those kinds of things. But we have been discussing, buildings that are basically at the end of their 30 years that the state says we have to maintain before we can get matching funds from the state. And then Corey and Gerald, I don't know if either one of you'd like to chime in on that one, or if you have anything further.
Yeah, the thing I would add to that, Jay, is that as far as portable removal, that was the other part of the question. We're only able to remove portables as we have new learning spaces that are created. So at that site specifically, the other program that wasn't mentioned by Jay was we also have our ABLES program. So we have an influx of students that come and go. A lot of them aren't there on a regular basis because they're in a virtual program, or they're in that program that maybe comes in a couple days a week. And so we would not be removing portables at this time, but due to the age of that building and some of the concerns with the infrastructure related to systems and HVAC and mechanical and some of those things, it's definitely a building that is on our priority list.
Okay, along with improvements to existing buildings, are there any plans for any new schools in the district to accommodate the high growth rate, or do projections indicate that existing buildings can keep up with increased capacity?
Well, I guess I will attempt that one. In terms of growth and capacity, we have, of course, worked with different demographers to help us with what is the future growth of Central Valley School District, and do we have capacity in the right places? And so that's always something that we continue to look at every single year as to How many students do we have coming in? How many do we project to be in our school district or in our zones? And then look at those schools and those areas. Now, as a school district, one of the things we try to do is to maintain what we call reserve sites. Those are sites that where we can build in the future new schools as needed as we continue to grow as a community. You heard Corey talk about the huge amount of building and growth that's going on. That is going to necessitate sometime in the future that we do build. Right now, our capacity is actually pretty good with the construction that we've just finished, but we do have sites that we are looking at. We have some around, the Ridgeline High School has some reserve sites. But that is one thing we need to look at with this levy and bond is what do we have on the west side of the district that we may need to be looking at as well? And do we need to have other reserve sites for future builds, just like people did, 20, 30, 40 years ago for us in purchasing those reserve sites and making sure that we had the land that we needed to continue to grow as a school district. We need to do the same thing for the future right now. And so that's kind of where we are at with that. Right now, I would say I feel pretty good with the capacity that we've been able to build up. But as we can see from the growth, we are going to need to do something. And so that will be down the road a bit, but something we're definitely planning for. And you will see that, we've talked a lot about levy right now, the kind of the short-term piece that Corey was talking about. But part of the plan that we're putting together to present to the board is also a long-term plan. So that 20 to 30-year plan. And that will have, how do we look at reserve sites? When should we look at building new? When do we need to look at remodel or renovation or increase capacity at some of our other schools?
I guess I will hop onto that really quickly because the other part of the long range plan that we talked about is it is initiated by a review of the state of all the buildings in the district. And so it is sort of a revolving kind of as some of the buildings that were addressed in 2015 and 18 were either renovated or expanded or brand new, like Jay said, they were addressing different needs throughout the district. And that's part of that long range plan is really trying to understand when and how to maximize the dollars that the district can also receive from the state. And so there's a couple different sort of metrics that allow the district to be eligible for state funds so that when these buildings are either renovated or replaced, or if there are new sites that are purchased, that you're maximizing your dollars. It isn't all local dollars, that you're getting contributions from the state as well. So that's the big piece with that long range plan is definitely being influenced by the demographics, the growth, et cetera, but it's also just kind of really understanding how to maximize state match and address need and get every dollar to go as far as possible.
Okay. I think that maybe Dr. Parker probably knows this one best, but are there any potential for before and after school childcare programs for elementary students? There seems to be a really high need and limited options for that.
Thank you, Cindy, for calling on this question. I had read it in the chat, and I think this is a really good question. And it's not just related to the Liberty Lake area, but district-wide. Some previous experience I've had with this, it becomes a facility issue because when you're having childcare, even potentially housed in our schools, then it becomes kind of a facility issue because you need that space before and after school. There have been different programs that are out there, and I've been interested in knowing what the possibilities are, but it's always a little tricky about weighing the needs of our before and after school programs that we already have in some of those limited spaces, and then trying to accommodate families with some before and after care. By all means, we want to support our families, especially our families who are really needing that before and after care, but we're trying to find the balance there. So it's always a possibility, but we're also trying to honor the specific our local businesses that have the child cares, so that if we decide to introduce something, we're not detracting necessarily from their businesses as well. I just wanted to share that this is something that's front and center for me because of some previous experience with that. And so I wanted to answer the question just to let you know that we are considering it, but it does play a factor in the big facilities piece, especially if we're taking before and after school space and the competing interests with activities.
Okay, so if there aren't any more questions, we will turn it back over to our panelists for any final words, as well as Dr. Parker, our superintendent. Oh,
Thank you,
there's one
Cindy.
more. Sorry, Jay, there just came one more.
Oh, okay.
All right, hold on here. Okay, sorry. Are there plans to bring back funding for students to go back on field trips and such as transportation? Can I reread that? Are there any plans to bring back funding for students to go on field trips, such as transportation?
And I'll have to defer to Dr. Parker or
Yes, let me jump in here. First of all, I want to say that it's not like we have stopped all field trips. I know for a fact we're working right now with our transportation department in Summit School that works with a program called Expeditionary Learning, and they have been taking field trips because that's part of their curricular program. So we're still doing that. What we have had to kind of curtail is a lot of the extra field trips, and we just have asked more questions about what are the standards they're tied to, the importance of those individual field trips, and making sure that they have complete relevance when it comes to the learning programs for which they're intended to basically promote with our students. And so I will also have to say this is, and this could be part of a larger budget question. We continue to tackle the budget situation that we have, and we're doing it very aggressively. And our hope is that while we are still having field trips and all of that, we hope to make sure that especially by the end of this year, we're able to reinstate even more possible things like field trips or even the extra ones. And so that's kind of a form and function of the budget. And I would also say on the field trips, and we know this because we had a bunch of kids recently come back on several buses from Kennewick from our high school competitions for music. And some of our challenges are not necessarily with funding it, but finding the bus drivers. And so just make sure if you're on this and a participant and you have someone that might be interested in filling out an application and joining our team to drive a bus, sorry, it's a shameless pitch, but we are in desperate need of a lot of employees and specifically bus drivers. So I just would also pitch that out there to all of you. But just to go back, it's not like all of our field trips have been stopped. We still have many of them going. It's just that we're pretty selective on which ones.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Parker. And I'd like to again thank everyone for being a part of this today. I do want to remind everyone that we have been recording this so that we can post it onto our website. So if there are folks that you know would love to hear this or get more information, this will be posted very shortly on the school district website. And with that, Dr. Parker, any final words for us today?
Thank you, Jay. And I just want to thank everybody, especially that we're seeing visually on the screen here today on the Zoom call, for the commitment towards this work. the involvement and the attention to detail, our volunteers who have been front and center, and our volunteers also represent parents in our community. Thank you so much for that. And I just want to also thank the attendees. I'm looking here. We had, I think, upwards of around 22, 23, in addition to our panelists. I want to thank you specifically for the very thoughtful questions that you asked. And also, if you find that your question did not get answered, please reach out to us. And also, one final thing, if we could just one more time put the screen up for the QR code of so that if there's any of our attendees that have not had a chance to fill this out, this is an opportunity for you specifically to get your voice heard about something specific that maybe we have neglected to share in this time with you this morning. So please fill this out. And because that input is so valuable to us, because ultimately this is our community, these are our schools, and we want to do the best by representing you all well in the process of putting forth a potential levy measure that's going to meet these needs. So on behalf of the school district, and also on behalf of our board of directors that were very, very interested in today's information as well, I just want to thank everybody for participating.
All right. I think that is the end. So there will be an email that comes out with the QR code and another link if anybody wants to participate in that way. So thanks, everybody.